But when you begin to look at trouble, what is trouble? Trouble is something that is going to be inevitable in each and every one of our lives. It's something that we're simply going to have to deal with. And I believe that each and every one of us fit in one of three categories when it comes to trouble. You either been in some trouble, you're in some trouble right now, or some trouble is on the way. One thing about trouble is unavoidable. It's going to come. Even when you go on your job, you be minding your own business, but somebody will come and try to rattle your cage because he wants to bring you some trouble. Even in church sometimes. Somebody in church might want to rattle your cage. But I want to tell you today that trouble don't last. But when you begin to look at trouble, I believe there's multiple sources. I believe there's multiple origins where trouble comes from. And the first kind of trouble I want to deal with is a trouble that comes from Satan. And that's called temptation. And when you begin to look at temptation, what Satan is trying to do, he's trying to entice you. He's trying to seduce you to get into something or to get with someone you ought to be avoiding. Well, preacher, why is he trying to tempt you? Because you have to understand, he understands your assignment. And once he understands your assignment, he's trying to keep you from doing the things that God has for you. When you begin to look at our theme, a mandate for ministry, God has called each and every one of us in here to do something. God has placed a mandate on our life. And you have to understand the devil's going to fight you with tooth and nails to try to keep you from obtaining the things of God. But I come to serve notice to the devil today that the devil is a lie. And why he's a lie? Because I know that God is the author and the finisher of my soul. And he's worthy to be praised. And the Bible tells me that when praises go up, I know that blessings come down. So even in the midst of my storm, even in the midst of all the hell that I might be going through, even in the midst of all the hell and the high water, I still come to give God praise. Why you want to praise him, preacher? Because Psalms 34:1 says, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praises shall continually be in my mouth. Yeah, is everything good? No, it's not good. My money is a little funny right now, but I'm still going to praise him. Is everything good at home sometimes? No, it's not, but I'm still going to praise him. Is everything good at work? No, it's not, but I'm still going to praise him because I understand, Sister Ronnie, that trouble don't last. But notice after you have the temptation from Satan, Pastor Case, there's another trouble that we have to deal with. I believe oftentimes, Deacon C. Ward, we blame too much on the devil. Because what we have to understand, some trouble comes from God. Somebody might be scratching their head saying, no, that can't be true. But if you look in the book of Matthew, the 5th chapter and the 45th verse, it tells that God reigns on the just and the unjust. So it tells us that even though you've been saved for 30 years, you might have been saved for 1 year, you might not be saved at all, you're going to have to deal with trouble. Yes, sir. Well, what's testing, Reverend? Testing from God is simply the procedure for critical evaluation. And all God is doing, he's just sitting back watching you. He's saying, now you claim to be the Christian. You're bragging about this God that you serve. You're bragging about how you are living for God. But as soon as the first sign of trouble comes, the first time, what we'll do a lot of times, we'll run and duck our head in the sand. But God is saying, I'm not looking for any jelly-belly Christians right now. He said, I'm looking for some Christians who are what I call street fighters. But notice I didn't say boxers and I didn't say kickboxers. Because see, boxers, they can only use their hands. And martial artists, they can use their hands and their feet. But when you are a street fighter, you will use whatever you have to use to get to God. If you have to use your teeth, you're going to use it to get to God. If you have to use your fist, you're going to use it to get to God. If you have to use your elbow, whatever you have to use, you're going to use it to get to God. But you have to understand what you're going through. If you're living right, if you're doing everything that you know to do by God, all you're doing is going through a test. All you're going through is a trial. And one thing that God is testing, he's testing our character. He's testing your intestinal fortitude. All God is trying to say is, what are you made of? But you have to understand, I've been in church for over 20 years now, and I notice there's a lot of so-called Christians that are made of nothing. But I stand here today to say, God, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do. I'm going to take the devil's best shot. But what happens oftentimes, a lot of us can't take a shot from Deuce. So there's no way in the world that we can never take a shot from Reverend Riddick. And you have to understand that your blessing is in how big of a blow that you can take. If you can take a big blow, you're going to get a bountiful blessing from God. Come on and give God praise. Because it's only a test. But after you have the temptation from Satan, and after you have the testing from God, my last point is that you're going to have a testimony. What's a testimony, preacher? A testimony is a public declaration of a religious experience that you had. And all I'm saying is that when you have been through something, you ought to be able to go and tell somebody else what you have came out of. You ought to be able to explain and tell that God has been good to you. Yeah, I know you're driving around in a hoopty, but at least God has given you transportation. I know you might not be living where you want to live in, but God has allowed you to have a roof over your head. I know you might not have all the money that you want to have, but God has still blessed you, and He's worthy to be praised. And when you begin to look at my testimony, I just want to share my testimony for a minute. Many of you know that I used to be a drug dealer. Many of you know that I've spent some time in prison. Some of you might not know that I used to be a whoremonger. Some of you might not know I used to be a liar. Some of you might not know that I used to be a cheater. But I stand here today to testify now I'm a man of God. I'm living before the high God. I stand here as a husband. I stand here as a father. I stand here as a teacher. But Pastor Cage, when I began to look back over my life, I looked back about 26 years ago. And I could have been just like Vincent van Gogh. I can remember being in my bathroom at home on my 16th birthday, crying uncontrollably. I could not control myself from crying on my 16th birthday. Most people are very happy on their 16th birthday because you're making a great transition. Now, preacher, was you sad because you didn't get your favorite gift? Absolutely not. Got plenty of gifts. Was you sad because you didn't get a bike? Absolutely not. Was you sad because you didn't get any money? Absolutely not. Sister Rhonda, there was only one thing that I wanted at my 16th birthday. And all I wanted was the love from my father. And I began to cry uncontrollably in this bathroom. And I was just laying on the floor. And when I began to look back, at that point, I could have been like Vincent van Gogh. I could have just lost my mind. But all of a sudden, there was a knock on the door. And my mother, she came in. She said, "Ed, what's wrong with you?" I didn't even want to tell her what was going on. But when you begin to look at what happened with me, I would go to practice after practice, Pastor Cage. I would see all my friends' fathers and stepfathers at their games. And I would begin to wonder, when is my father going to show up for my game? When is my father going to show up for my sporting event? When is my father going to be present? All I wanted was my father's love. But my mother stepped in that room and she said, "Eric, don't you worry about him." She said, "Today on your 16th birthday, it's time for you to step up and be a man." And I stand here today and tell you that he still hasn't stepped in my life. But I learned to understand that what I went through, it was only a test. What I went through from my father's experience made me be a good father. What I went through with my father's experience made me want to be a good husband. What I went through with my father's experience made me want to be a Christian. When it comes to my walk with God, this is nothing that I play with. I understand that there's going to be trials and there's going to be tribulations. But I've come to serve notice to the devil today that I'm putting my foot on his neck because I realize that trouble don't last. So I want to tell somebody here today, I don't care what you're going through. I don't care how bad your situation might be. You need to know that Deuteronomy 31:6 says he'll never leave you nor forsake you. So as you're going through the trials of life, you need to understand that trouble don't last.